Good morning, everyone. Well, I've got in big letters on my script, do intro, because I didn't do it last Friday. I'm sorry about that. So good morning, everyone. This is the morning devotional, and this is our final leg of our journey in Nehemiah. My name's Mike, by the way. Okay, so the reading today is this one, which I'll run through, and it's Nehemiah 13 verses 19 to 31. When evening shadows fell on the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I ordered the doors to be shut and not opened until the Sabbath was over. I stationed some of my own men at the gates so that no load could be brought in on the Sabbath day. Once or twice the merchants and sellers of all kinds of goods spent the night outside Jerusalem, but I warned them and said, "Why do you spend the night by the wall? If you do this again, I will arrest you." From that time on, they no longer came on the Sabbath. Then I commanded the Levites to purify themselves and go and guard the gates in order to keep the Sabbath day holy. Remember me for this also, my God, and show mercy to me according to your great love. Moreover, in those days, I saw the men of Judah who had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod or the language of one of the other peoples, and did not know how to speak the language of Judah. I rebuked them and called curses down on them. I beat some of the men and pulled out their hair. I made them take their oath in God's name and said, "You are not to give your daughters in marriage to their sons, nor are you to take their daughters in marriage for your sons or for yourselves." Was it not because of marriages like these that Solomon, king of Israel, sinned? Among the many nations, there was no king like him. He was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. But even he was led into sin by foreign women. Must we hear now that you too are doing all these terrible wickednesses and are being unfaithful to our God by marrying foreign women? One of the sons of Jehoiada, son of Eliashib, the high priest, was son-in-law to Sanballat the Horonite, and I drove him away from me. Remember them, my God, because they defiled the priestly office and the covenant of the priesthood and of the Levites. So I purified the priests and the Levites of everything foreign and assigned them duties, each to his own task. I also made provision for contributions of wood at designated times and for the first fruits. Remember me with favor, my God. Okay, so final passage in Nehemiah. We reached the end of the journey, and after an excellent summary by Fiona yesterday, I will do my best to do the same. First thing to say is that the book of Nehemiah should never have been written. The fact that it was is a result of a failure to listen and heed warnings. As we have seen, it is a story of recovery following mistakes made in the past. How many times do we read the dire warnings of past prophets such as Jeremiah? "If you do not turn from your wicked ways, I will bring your downfall," etc., or words to that effect. And sure enough, they didn't heed the warnings, and disaster struck, and destruction and exile followed, leading to this account of the reconstruction and restoration. And even here in this final passage, and after all that has gone before, we see the old problems beginning to return. Intermarrying with foreign tribes and not respecting the Sabbath. How could the memories be so short? And indeed, there is that reference in verse 26 to past mistakes, which led to the downfall of Solomon. And last Friday, I mentioned the downfall of David in a very similar circumstance. And was this the last time Jerusalem was rebuilt? Well, no. The present city walls date from the 16th century and the days of the Ottoman Empire. So the restorations carried out in Nehemiah's time did not last. So why do these things happen? Well, it has probably not escaped your attention that the Olympics are currently being held in Tokyo, and I'm pleased to say that my 2012 kit still fits me. My first memories of the Olympics are indeed the Tokyo Olympics, but that was the first edition held back in 1964. And one quick musical reference, I promised I wouldn't do these, but I'll do one. If like me, you find the BBC's current Olympic intro theme a bit incomprehensible, I guess I'm just too old these days, Google and check out Tokyo Melody by Helmut Zacharias, the theme tune from the 1964 edition. You'll also get some video of the 1964 games as it was then. It was very much of its time, but was a landmark signature tune in its day, Tokyo Melody. Now, in more recent times, the last games were held in Rio in 2016. And in those games, Jack Law and Chris Mears made history when they won Britain's first diving gold medals in the synchronized 3-meter springboard final. Much was made of this at the time. However, last week, with a new partner, Jack Law failed in his defense of that title, coming a distant 7th. So no repeat of the gold won at the Rio Games with his then partner, Chris Mears, although I now understand that Jack Law is going in the solo competition, so maybe we will hear about him. However, Chris Mears, his then partner, had retired from competitive diving, and he said this in an interview on BBC One last week on winning that gold medal back in 2016. He said, "All my wildest dreams came true, and then it all came crashing down." He went on to share of the mental struggles lasting nearly 3 years after his 2016 triumph. Now, much has been said about mental health during these Olympics, following Simone Biles' withdrawal from the gymnastics, and most recently by swimmer Adam Peaty, who announced he is taking a break to recharge his mental batteries. I'm not going to go into this here, but Chris Mears' story is quite telling. So many children's stories of my era end with the words, "and they all lived happily ever after." Normally our fairy tale characters have overcome the attentions of the big bad wolf or other adversaries, and then they triumph. And after it is all over, eternal happiness follows. Except that doesn't always happen, and certainly didn't happen in Chris Mears' case. And at the end of this Nehemiah journey, did they all live happily ever after, having overcome the exile? And were they once again singing songs in their own land? Well, yes, at first, but as we see in this closing passage, they were already becoming distracted. The warning signs were there. Our Olympian, Chris Mears, having reached the pinnacle of his dreams, had nowhere else to go, but into the fog of doubt and depression and soul-searching. It was all over. The job he'd worked on all those years to achieve had been done. So how do we respond to the end of the journey in Nehemiah? Well, here we have a Class 700 train, or electrical multiple unit, better known to you and I as a Thameslink train, and also known as the Stormtroopers, which will mean something to the fans of Star Wars. The 4th digit on the unit number here indicates it's a 12-car train. The shorter 8-car units have a 0 in the 4th digit. Now, where do you stand to join your Thameslink train? Well, look out for this sign on the platform. Oops, I put up the wrong picture. Let's put the correct picture up. Oh, that's not working for some reason. Try again. No, it's not going to work for me. Okay, I'm going to have to leave that bit out, all right? Anyway, like most modern electric trains, when they are coasting with power off, our Thameslink trains utilise regenerative braking, where they return power back to the system, be it a DC third rail in our area or AC overhead in north of London. To the naked eye, therefore, these trains can appear to be motoring along, but they may only be coasting. The power is switched off and they are using the momentum built up from an earlier power application to continue propelling forward. Eventually, without the reapplication of power, they will slow down and stop. And that is the point, as we have seen in Nehemiah and has been described so well during our journey. A vision requires the power and energy of those involved to be realized. However, what happens when the job is done? What next? We cannot live off the momentum of these previous successes for long, although it's okay for a while to consolidate, take a break maybe and regroup. But eventually, like our Thameslink train, we will eventually stop. There must be something else, something new to aim for. Without this, as in this last passage of Nehemiah, get that word out, other distractions creep in and take over, and focus is lost. We will slow down and stop. Now compare an interview given by triathlete Johnny Brownlee after he won his first Olympic gold medal in the mixed triathlon relay. He announced this to be his last games, but spoke of already having plans for the next stage in his life. No crash here, but a likely smooth landing and a moving on to new things. Living on momentum eventually leads to a lack of direction and purpose, and possibly depression, as we saw in Chris Mears' case. What happens now that the city of Jerusalem is rebuilt and restored, or what happens after the gold medal has been won? Throughout the Old Testament, there are examples of great people falling because they have been living on momentum. And it appears here that this is beginning to happen in these closing pages of Nehemiah. Distractions are creeping in. There must therefore be a restoration of power. We cannot coast along forever. Don't live off those past successes, but use them as stepping stones and as a platform to climb the next mountain. That's what Johnny Brownlee is going to do. The lessons of this Nehemiah journey must surely be to remain focused. As the words of the Rodgers and Hammerstein song from The Sound of Music, sorry, another musical reference, that every mountain is climbed and every stream is forded, not just the first ones. And as we come to pray, let us focus on where we are going and where we go next if we have already reached a goal. I realize that for some this is hard. For myself, it is difficult right now to take on new challenges. My life is effectively on pause. And for those who suffer depression, just like Chris Mears did, it is hugely difficult to be motivated. But what I can say from experience is that even with depression, pressing on is actually better in the end than standing still. 1 Corinthians 9 verses 24 says, "Do you not know that in the race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like somebody running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified from the prize." The response to Nehemiah and the lessons are, one, to achieve the goal, and when the goal has been achieved, maybe take a break and then move forward to the next one. And number two, don't wander aimlessly into a malaise of distraction where temptations seem very attractive. Nehemiah teaches us the power of combined effort to reach a goal. And each of us can, in our own way, be gold medalists. Thank you very much for listening.